Welcome everyone. It is 6:30 and you know what that means. Today we got the Legacy Project and we are on episode 39 talking about men and how we love differently today. This one hits home for me just because as I've gotten older, you don't really realize the difference as like what you feel as a man versus what a woman might feel in terms of love. I feel like they share it a lot in all the kids movies, whether it's Disney or Cartoon Network. You kind of could see it evolve over time of just the way that love and art. And there's something that's really ingrained with how we interact with each other, whether it's like that energy that just kind of feels like there's like a lot of tension in the air, and learning how to really use that and channel that as you develop and mature over time. So today we're going to explore what that means to each of us in our lives, how it applies in society, and then just give a little bit of our opinions of how we think the love is really being shifted right now.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I got my co-host here, my father, Albert Chavez, and let's get it started tonight.
Yeah. Thank you. And welcome, everybody. Hi, Kay. Good to see you on here. My daughter Kaylee's on here. But yeah, this is, Albert and I, we get together once a week after the episode that we do on Tuesdays, and we talk about different topics. And this is just got thrown around a little bit. And I think there's a lot of reasons why. I know me personally, I didn't even know what love was actually until a few years ago. And the reason why is this term love has so many different meanings. Is it a noun? Is it a verb? Is it an adjective? And, I love what you brought up, Albert. Like, when we're kids, it's different when we're children. When we're children, we feel love through compassion, through touching, through soothing. Some feel it more than others. I didn't get a whole lot of that as a kid, but I know with you and your sisters, your mom and I gave you lots of love. The challenge is when our bodies change and we adapt and we become adults. Innately, I think I know we are wired differently for survival, for the way we are procreated. Nature versus nurture, right? Women are naturally nurturing. Men, they go out to nature and they go conquering, they go do things. There's fulfillment that they need. And I think the reason why this is an important topic, specifically in this new modern day era, is because things are shifting. And I had someone ask me today, so some of those qualities that men have, to provide, to protect, are they still needed? That's a great question. Innately, I believe they are, because at the crux of it, femininity and masculinity are there for a purpose. They're actually there to coexist together. So yes, I believe that men love differently. We could dive a little bit further into this, but yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this.
Yeah, let's get started. Actually, just give me an idea of how do you show your love? Like, is there something that you notice as a little boy that you always like to do, or has that evolved as you've had more mature relationships?
Yeah. So I think we need to define what love is, right? That's the first thing, the definition. Definition of love for men and children and women are all different. So I would say as an adult, how I quote unquote showed my love, because I think this is where people get confusing, where it's a noun or a verb. I think people think that by me being your parent, or by me going to your school functions, or me by providing a house over, that's love. That's not necessarily love. Those are obligations, but they can be termed as love. And I think that it's important for me, like as a grown man, I've had to evolve into learning what love meant for myself to give to others. For example, one of the biggest things, how I learned how to parent, is something that I lacked. I never, like my parents never like hugged me. My parents never kissed me. Believe it or not, my parents never, when I got hurt, are you okay? To me, those are signs of love. Does that make sense? So I think for me as a parent, me being a parent so young really allowed me to tap into that part of me that needed to heal as a person, which is to parent my kids like I wanted to be parented. And that's with love, with hugging, with affection, with terms of endearment, with words of affirmation. All those things to me were a form of love, including coaching you guys, including walking you to school, including participating in all these things you guys were a part of. That's my definition of showing love to my family, if that makes sense.
And I think you touched on it really importantly, where there's something different that you really know. Like it's not necessarily just about the responsibility of it all, right? That's a form of love, right? That's that unconditional love that we talk about, where you're gonna, especially as a parent, when
Yeah.
you're on us as kids, there's something that is gonna be there always, right?
Yeah.
But I think what you kind of hinted underneath is what the kids need as well in that as well. And I think you're kind of talking to yourself as you're doing it, just from hearing your story and us, sharing this stuff over time, right? There's a sense of like, what more are we're bringing rather than just the typical like, oh, I'm putting a roof over your head, so that's my form of love, and then just leaving that at the door, right? And that's it. But I think as like the little boy that wants to kind of feel seen, whether it's in a romantic relationship or with my parents, is like there's something more that's really needed. And we all want to feel, which is why we need that connection, and we're craving that nowadays, right? So I guess with like specifically, I'll kind of take it back. I think I want to take it back to like the little child in me, right? Because I feel like that's the evolution of how we realize the growth of what men really want specifically, which is our topic today, right? So I'll take it back to when I was like a little boy. Is like, I know with you and me, kind of what you said, we would play outside, I'd play with my sisters, I'd play with you, we throw the ball around, play catch, have that little competitive spirit, right? It feels very freeing and flowing. And then I remember like the first time I was like interested in a girl, right? Like I would do the same thing. Like I would chase them around, they would chase me around, right? Very like simple and like juvenile and like very, like a kid. And I think we all want to like channel that playfulness, right? And so when I fast forward to now, we kind of talked about it in one of our other ones, how me and you are very serious, but we want to be playful, to show that to that significant other, that person that really brings that out of us, because it's really easy to be macho and it's easy to just like have this overly structured feeling. And I know for me, I get tired of doing that, I feel like I want to express that playfulness more. So I don't know if that's a feeling that you kind of feel now when you're in either a romantic relationship or just showing your love with me and my sisters.
Yeah, great question. And I think it's important to separate the two, because and this is where again that word love gets, I think it gets muddled, because, and this is where we'll talk a little bit more about women and men being differently, but specifically just the term love with family and siblings and children is a different type of love than loving your grandma or your mom. It's a different love. But that's also a different love than your partner and the person you're sleeping with and your wife. It's a different type of love. And I think that's why it gets confusing, because we lump love into this big kaleidoscope of just words, when in fact they're really different. Because I'm going to kiss my girl different than I'm going to kiss my kids. It's a different love, right? And this is where also we'll go down a little rabbit hole of lust. This is where lust gets involved. I can tell you for sure, I didn't know really what love was until recently. Like there have been women that have come into my life where I thought I loved them, but it was an infatuation of a feeling they made me feel when I was with them, as opposed to me needing or them supplying what I really needed, was peace, was honor, was respect. So my definition had to get refined as a man. So to taking it back just a little further, so to answer your question, it's really about understanding that everybody's definition is going to be different, yet innately men do treat love differently than women. For example, parenting. Parents, men and women, we parent different. We show love differently. Women are going to naturally nurture their kids and coddle them and want them to keep safe, right? Men, we don't do that. We're differently. We're like, go play, go be adventurous, go lead. We want you to take risks. That's our way of showing you love, is to leave the nest, is go try stuff. Moms are like, wait, you can't play in the street. Someone might get hurt. No, go let them play in the street. Go let them, go let them. So this is where it's important that our definitions are not the same, because we as men, we want our kids to grow. Not saying that women don't. What I'm saying is that we view things differently. That's where discipline comes in. I'm going on a rabbit hole. This is where discipline comes in. This is where again, just leading by example comes in. And so when we're talking about this definition of love, it's really scattered, and specifically, are we talking romantic love? Are we talking, family love? We're talking work love. And this is what I thought is an important topic, because specifically I wanted to get into romantic love, because that is where a lot of us, including myself, have failed. But love in general, men love differently based upon the qualities that we have masculinity wise, which is to lead, which is to be responsible, which is to be dutiful, which is all these other qualities that the feminine, not that they don't have, but their nurturing skills and their coping mechanisms and their ability to be compassionate is a different skill of love than what men have.
So let's dive into the part you're talking about, the romantic part, right? Just
Yeah.
a little simpler, right? So at what point, because you talked about like the idea of lust too, the antithesis, the almost like shadow aspect of it, right? So when did you know, or when was there a time when you finally realized that love is not equal sex, or love does not equal, I guess, that in that immediate gratification of instant love at the time?
When I met your mom. Your mom was the first woman that I felt I actually loved her, because of the things that her and I talked about intimately about our lives, how we grow up in this from the same cloth, the things that we struggled with. And I had never had this type of conversation with any other person before. It was more, hey, you're cute. Hey, I think you're cute. Next thing you know, we're going on a date. Next thing you know, we're making out. Next thing you know, we have sex. It was that like that for me when I was in my early teens or late teens and 20s. So my view of love came from attention, but it was just lust for me. Okay. But when I met your mom, why this is an important story, is because we were in the same class together. We had same values at the time. I had never met anybody. She was just different, dude. Like, your mom was just way different. As you know, she's just a different spirit. And she was very, very respectful. She was very ladylike. She had all these qualities of pursuing a life despite her detriment in her family. Matter of fact, the funny story, you don't know this, is that when I first met her, I thought she was rich. Like, I thought she was this rich girl, because she just carried herself. She just wore beautiful makeup. She just dressed very classy. And she's like, my mom lives in a trailer park. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I think that was the first time love entered my life, of understanding that, okay, and this is where the topic I thought would go, which is when a man decides to love, he's like, oh, fuck. Because now that means I want to be responsible for you. That means I'm willing to, people don't want to hear this, I'm willing to die for you. I'm willing to sacrifice myself as a man, that anything happens to you, I'm going to be the first one there to have your side. And that's much different than women. Women love everything. They love the process. They love the flowers. They love when you court them. They love how you make them feel. All these, it's not nothing bad. It's just different. Because when men romantically fall in love, there's this threshold that we cross, that women don't understand, that once we cross it, we don't go back. Because now I'm saying, because I love you, I'm willing to take the next level of protect, to provide, to be that person in your life that's going to take a bullet or save your life in order to give up mine. That's the real difference between the two.
And I think there's that clear divide too, like the walls almost come up. And I think that's what we really want to hone on into. Is I didn't realize this until I was older, like probably like early 20s. Is that like once I realized and like wanted to commit, because that's what it is, right? It's a commitment, right? Even on the smallest of levels of just like wanting to have someone be your girlfriend, right? It's like once you let that go, every other woman is like off the charts.
Yeah,
When he really feels like he knows, everything is off the table. When he's not, when he's wishy-washy and still kind of flirting with other things, that's when it's not the same. And I think that's why you see that jealousy can pop up too, right?
absolutely.
Is because there's not that commitment to it. But we're trained to speak what we know will get the right answer, but the actions will show what's really defined. And I think that's what we're touching on right now is the actions will show what's really behind the intentionality of everything, right? And that's what I was wanting to like get at with the question as well too, when I was asking like, when did you know that you finally feel like you could eliminate all the other options, right? Too. And that's the funny thing too, is we talk about whether it's with love or with something else, is once you eliminate every other option, it makes everything so much simpler.
It
And
does.
that ducking of responsibility is hard, and I think that's what defines a boy versus a man, is not ducking that responsibility, which is what we're touching on right now too. Because I know, like for me, it makes it a lot easier when I decide to actually commit, because then I'm not stressed out about everything too. Like me and you talk about all the time, like behind the scenes, right? Is like fuck, this is what came up for me. Like I just feel like um I'm questioning everything, about what she's doing. I'm questioning like what I'm doing to make sure I'm providing, or I'm doing what I need to do to make everything successful. And that's because I'm like not fully committed, I'm like trying to get out of something, and I think that's when I know I need to double down on my commitment, or else it's just gonna just fall in
Yeah.
shambles.
There was an interview I was watching, and a lady asked, so how do you know if a man truly loves you? And the man said, you won't. But I will tell you, he can't stop thinking about you. Like you're on his mind. And this is where it gets really confusing, because a lot of women, I'm not saying that there aren't toxic men out there. I don't want anybody to take my words. This is where that word jealousy comes in. This is where that word controlling comes in. Because if you have a man that's saying, I'm willing to now die for you, yet you as an individual, as a woman, are still acting single. In other words, posting certain things, maybe acting like you're single, going out with your friends, or maybe going on girls trips without your man, or too often. If you're acting single, then there's that respect gets blurred, because this man is now willing to give his life, but he can't protect you if you're out there doing your own thing where he's not around. And I think this is where the modern age is really shifting, where there's so many breakups happening. There's so many non-committal people, or there's so many people looking for the next best thing, because they don't innately know what they want because of the self-worth that they haven't worked through. And so every new relationship, now you have a new person, and maybe someone says, I love you, but they're not really showing love. So there's all these things happening in this modern world where it makes it super confusing, again, what that word love means. So in order for you as a person to understand love, you need to understand your definition of what love for you is. When you know your definition for what your love is, when someone isn't given to you, then you know that person you can't love. You can't love them. And so how am I going to risk my life for someone now and give you my love if you're not giving me what I need, but I'm not giving it to myself because I'm respecting the boundaries, because I'm getting all stressed out and chaotic because I'm allowing certain behaviors to happen, when I know at the core that's not going to make me feel safe. It's not going to make you feel safe. So this is where it gets really muddled again. How men love is when we love really hard, which we do, and we make that commitment, right? Women control sex, men control relationships. That's just how it works, right? Men control whether we're in relationships. They don't control who breaks up with you, but men control, am I going to screw this woman and just mess with her, or want to be in a relationship with her? We control that. And so when we get to a point where we're in a relationship, we're committed, that next level of love is now, okay, I'm committed, but love now means that, okay, we're taking the next level to where this is what I need in order to feel safe around you. And what do you need for me to feel safe? And this is where the definitions just need to be more redefined in relationships.
Yeah, and you just touched on the last piece. I think feeling that safety too. a lot of times I think men don't know when to feel safe, and that's when that's another difference too in how we actually know how much we can be vulnerable, right? Because vulnerability is not weakness, right? It's it takes a lot for someone to really, especially for a guy. Like for me, it took me a while to really trust, like, oh, okay, if I can say something, it won't be just shared with anything else too. And this is something that I've had talks with and conversations with other people about too. Is I just assumed that when I shared in the past, that when I shared intimate details with a significant other, they would just tell their girlfriends, you know, like they girl talk, right? And I think that's made it kind of easier to share. I'm like, okay, then whatever. If I share it with her, then I'm willing to let that all be public knowledge. But then on the flip side, if it's something that's like confidential and that's being shared, and then that can allow for clusters to happen and like other stuff behind scenes to where that could be put against you, and then now this is like a them versus me type deal, and so that can break the trust that is built in there too of that sanctity in the relationship that I think we're also touching upon too. Is not only is there the inner relationships with you and that person, right, to want to love, but if you are going to share that with other people, then that can invade what you guys are building. And so is that part of the relationship that you want to build? I think that's another part of this conversation too, is like how vulnerable are you willing to be? I've had to address with myself, and we've had to talk about it where how honest can I be with someone dictates how vulnerable I could be with them, and in turn how much I can trust that our relationship is going to be solid. And um, for me, that equation's been approximately like I have to be 100% honest with myself, about 95% with my close friends and relationship, and about 85-90% with other people, right? Because I don't want to be too honest with someone, because then I don't want to necessarily lie to their face, but if they can't take that honesty, then I don't want that receiving back. But the closer that I get to my circle, I want to be damn near honest, because they need to understand what's going on. But you also have to understand that they are people too with different
Yeah.
feelings. So you don't want to compromise yourself, but be able to be vulnerable enough with them.
Well, this is where, you and I rabbit hole, but this is where I've coined, and I didn't make it up, but I've heard it, is love ain't lies. Okay. And again, a definition of love is so many people want to be people's friends. Okay. That they'll tell them what they want to hear. A great example is this. We have a lot of women on here. A great example is this is in this modern age, a lot of women are telling other women, hey, you're a 10, you're a 9, you're a 10. Yet there's really 10s and then there's really 4s, but you're probably a 5, right? So what I'm saying though is like that's not helping that individual. Or even another way, right? Let's say, for example, I was, engaged to get married to somebody, and that person is now gained 50 pounds because they're eating shitty. Like, am I going to lie to her and say like, hey babe, you look great? Are her friends going to lie to her? Hey, you look great, you're beautiful. Or are they going to tell her like, look, is there something going on? Do you need support with something? Right. But tell her the truth. Like, I love you. However, this something needs to change because our love life is being challenged. My attraction to you has been challenged. Like, those are hard conversations to have. And so, in my opinion, right, again, the definition of love, men love differently. You and I have shown love differently, because I think for the first time in my life, when you and I sat toe to toe together, if you and I really didn't share our true feelings about being vulnerable, what was bothering us, and just told surface things like we were before, and that's not love, that's lying, we wouldn't be where we're at. We're having these in-depth conversations about love. So love, really, if you really love someone, you can't lie to them and tell them what they want to hear. You have to be honest with them, and that's what you're talking about, is that honesty part, and not and willing to take the risk of them persecuting you, or willing to take the risk of them not being mad at you. That's the risk you have to take. But if they get mad at you, or if they block you, you're not the problem. They're just not ready to receive it. And that's what you're talking about, being vulnerable, like sharing what your truth is to someone that you love, and that person is not ready to receive, or they're immature. That's not a you problem, that's a them problem.
Uh, were talking about this yesterday in my men's group about like triggers and stuff like that. Just relationships are complicated, right? And so I think since we're two men on here, right, and we're talking about how we want to love differently and what that looks like, I think we can show them what that can really entail. I think it sounds robotic, but you go back to the systems of everything, right? You're going to get triggered. And I don't mean you're different on this, but I don't think we're necessarily broken. But those imperfections that are there are part of you wholeheartedly, right? And so I think worrying about you always being triggered or me being triggered or insert significant other being triggered, I think that's treating the symptom, right? Because it's going to happen. Maybe it's 1 in a million and you're super good at counteracting those, right? But let's say you're probably not. You're going to get triggered at one point because I'm going to do something to cross your boundary. But how are we going to talk about it afterwards? I think is really important.
Yeah.
That's the system. There has to be some way to do it. And I think talking with your partner about what that means is really going to show how you want to be loved. Yeah. And so I know with me and you, our relationship has been, hey, if there's something that crossed the line, we've already given each other permission for that to just share it. And it might come off dry, but we've already had that communication. So to take a few steps back on what and how to do that, I think it really is important to share when I get triggered, this is how I want to be. That's the easiest way to do it, right? Instead of putting it on the other person, like you triggered me, so you need to apologize. Just say, hey, when this happens, and it's probably better to do it when you're not triggered, because then you're not going to be as emotional about the situation. But in case you are, I think it's easier to talk about, hey, I just got triggered. This is what I need to at least feel comfortable right now. And then when it's time to have that conversation, you can say like, so next time that happens, this is how I would like to be treated. And this goes beyond just men and women, but I think for me, out of respect, that's where I want to be clear is like, if there's a respect piece out of it, that's, I think, where we talk specifically with men is there needs to be some sort of respect that I can be open with my spouse. And that's going to go beyond just feeling overly empathetic too. And another piece that I've noticed, and I don't know if I share this with you or not, but I think I've realized on why I've craved a lot of like more masculine energy compared to feminine when I'm having peers around is I've noticed, and I never checked the definition of it, but I noticed a lot of like feminine energy can be more sympathetic in terms of like wanting to absolve the problem and by feeling it, and then a lot of masculine energy tends to be like empathetic in the sense of wanting to accomplish and like be solution oriented with that goal. And you can crave both of those energies at certain points, but if it's overly done, I know I crave more of the solution oriented energy because it's like I don't want to be trapped in that emotion field because it's easy to just go in circles and then nothing gets done. You're like, okay, I feel good, I felt the emotion, and then it's like, oh, but then there's one more thing, and then you just get trapped in that like whirlpool of emotions that can be, it's fun to talk about sometimes, but you're not going anywhere,
Yeah. Well, what I heard from that is, and we've said it before, is like you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems. Okay, you fall to your disciplines, your systems, what you've created. And I think just using you as an example, we created a system organically, but we had to come to a consensus of what we both wanted. And the systems were developed as each conversation went deeper and deeper and deeper. Now we had this ground point that we had this center that we could always go to. Okay, the precedent has said is we did this before, so okay, we can start here, and then we built from there. And I think that's what I learned about myself, like in relationships, is in the past I would be very passive aggressive. Believe it or not, dude, I was super passive aggressive with your mom for years, and she fucking hated it. Part of it wasn't her fault or my fault, is we never learned how to communicate with each other. What I love about your generation has figured out a way to ask for what you need. Ours just buried it. And now people like myself, and you've had to learn this too, just through the men's group, is we've had to really learn how to get self-respect for ourselves in order to tell people what we want, regardless of the outcome. And then that creates more belief that, okay, I can do this. And some people you can't do that with. And so you either shy away from them, or you just repel them, or you learn how to just move on. And I think for me, because I was such a people pleaser, I never learned how to ask for what I wanted. Now that I'm 52 years old and I've been through the gamut, I've been grounded in, grounded out, is I finally have learned that if I don't ask for what I want, I'll never get what I need. And if I do ask what I want and I have to ask 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, that's too many times. That person that I'm with, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a child, whether it's a parent, whether it's a friend or a significant other, I have to make a decision. That decision is either A, accept who they are, right? Or B, cut, and I can't be in your life anymore. Or C, really, really have dialogue with them that I can only meet you halfway. Like I can't give you all of me. I give you some of me. I accept who you are, but there's just some conversations we're not going to be able to have. And that for me has been really groundbreaking for me. And that's my way of, again, going down this rabbit hole of showing my self-love to myself, what I needed for myself, is I can be more direct now. I can be more direct because I'm not worried about the outcome that's going to happen, because it's going to happen no matter what. But if I continually pacify you and try to make waves with you and create harmony with you and make you feel good, yet I'm still violating myself, all that does is it creates more chaos for myself. And then now I second guess myself, and now I'm hurting myself, and I came to a point, well, then I project that to someone else. So the cycle just keeps going on and on and on. So in essence, I've learned how to utilize those tools by putting systems in place for myself, so that I'm not just throwing shit on the wall, but I do have a system to fall back to for what I need and how to communicate it.
Yeah, you're talking about a lot of like self-love, yeah. And that's part of the definition, I think. For me, is like I've learned to really appreciate and know what is important, what I want to include in my life, like what you said. Like, is there something I need to cut? I know one of the things I like doing is adding a lot more, and sometimes that can lead to being overwhelmed, right, and not feeling whole with everything that I want to do. So when I talk about self-love with myself, it's putting the things out there that I want in there too, so that I can build, the whole relationship and make sure that I'm feeling myself. There's an interesting little equation that I learned where 1 + 1 = 3. Where if you have 2 whole people, you can create an extra space and build the relationship up. But half of a person does not equal 1 full relationship, because you have 2 people that aren't filling their own cups, so they don't know how to bring that space over to the relationship. And what's really important about that is it all comes down to, like, what do you know about yourself, so that you can understand and go back and ask for what you need. You can go back and tell the person, like, this is important to me, this is something that I want to do. Whether it's like spending quality time with someone, people like to give gifts with each other, like the 5 love languages, right? To talk about certain things, and realizing, like, what it comes down to is, like, how do you feel like you can show up to this relationship and show your love to the world, and not feel like you're just doing it for everyone else. Because me and you have both been there, where it feels like just every time you move, every time you want to do something, it just makes it that much harder in a relationship, because you don't know what it really feels like, and don't really know, like, how you can show up for that other person.
Yeah, and I know we wanted to go over this a little bit. Is how do men show? So men love differently, but how do we receive love differently, right? So, and this was confusing for me, and I've gotten a lot of discussions with a lot of men, and they'll argue with me, because I think that definition of love is, again, you may not agree with me out there in TV land, but there's enough evidence to show that if you put a group of men together, the number one thing actually two things men crave: appreciation and respect. And those are our love languages. And a lot of women don't understand that. And a lot of women say, well, you can get respect when you can get respect when you give respect. That's like me telling you, I'll give you love if you give me love. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It's understanding our definitions of love are differently. Men don't love like women. We don't receive love like women. And I didn't really understand that till about 2 years ago. So one thing that bothered me, I'll share this with you, with my relationship with your mom, is like I never felt respected or appreciated by her, but I also never really gave it to her. So it was what I was looking for, I never got. But what I'm saying, if you put two things together of what really men want, most men want, we're like little fucking puppy dogs. And women, we're like little puppy dogs. We just want to know that we did a good job. You appreciated what we did. Thank you for whatever you did. But in the day, when you look at us, we want to see this. It's not love. It's like, I fucking respect that man in my life. Like, he's showing up for me and how I want to be treated and how I want to be fulfilled. That is our way of showing love. It is feeling like you respect us, feeling like you really appreciate us. And a lot of women don't understand that. And vice versa. You know, women, how they want to be felt loved is they want to feel like they can feel safety around it. Some people think safety has to do with me putting your hands on you. No, this is conversation. Do I feel safe around you, telling you my deepest, darkest secrets? Is how women feel. Are you gonna like gaslight me? Are you gonna make me feel guilty about what I'm saying to you? That is what men are not doing a good job of, is making their women feel safe and secure in the relationship. What does that mean? Well, you know, if you're fucking going to all these dating websites, you're doing all these things, you're not making her feel secure, you've done certain things. I mean, women want to feel secure, but they also want to be led, not by holding the hand or like dictating what. No, sometimes they just want to be simple as, hey babe, I made a reservation for us for Friday at XYZ. Wear this hot red dress you have on, and I'm picking you up at 6 o'clock. Something as simple as that. They want to be led. So understanding how we love and how we receive love is also a really important definition that a lot of us still don't understand.
And I think you touched on it really, really well with the receiving part. Is a lot of men don't really know what they want because they don't know how to give it to. And so if you think that, hey, I want to feel appreciated, hey, I want to feel respected, only on that. I mean, the appreciation part probably is, we should probably understand how to give it. We just don't know how always. You know, we see flowers, we see gifts, and shower that. And some women love that, right? You know, but it's more so like, how do you show your appreciation for them as well? And they don't. I mean, I grew up with a lot of women in my life, so it was a little bit easier, you know. But just like listening, I noticed is like the easiest way too. It's just like, I think that's our form of respect that we are really bad at, is like sometimes giving that respect back in a way. And I think that's the toughest thing for sure, is like just being there for them and showing that you are there for them, which is why this is disconnects, where we don't always know how to give what we are asking for. I think that's where a lot of times women have an issue, is we want to show it a certain way in our way, and we can be very stubborn. And it makes things a little bit harder than what it needs to be. In terms of like receiving love though, I think you really changed the way I thought on like the whole just law of reciprocity. Is like, you have to be willing to like appreciate that thank you and actually take in that thank you as well too, because sometimes you'll just like be like, okay, I accomplished this, I'm done, I've already done it, and like you hear the thank you but you don't hear the thank you, and
You don't
so then
feel
you're
it.
also, you don't feel, and then you're also, we build the relationships and we show people how we are to be treated, and so we might demand it but we're not receiving it. And then so like, it may be there and you have to be willing to accept it. You know, you have to be willing to listen to it and look for it as well. Because if you're just demanding it, and she says, I'm giving it, well, someone is off, or maybe you guys are both off, right? And I think that's something that needs to also be talked on too, is we have to be able to look for it as well and not just expect it to be there, because it might already be there. We just are closed off to it.
Yeah, what I was referring to, dude, great, bringing that up is, I've had a few incidents in my life recently. This, again, a lot of you don't know, like, a lot of my transformation has happened in the last 5 years. Matter of fact, my anniversary of almost hitting rock bottom was 5 years ago this November. But what I had to do is I had to deconstruct these ideas that I had about myself. And the one thing is, if anybody were to ask you about me, like, I'd be the first one to pay the bill. I'd be the first person to just do things for people. But when it came to getting accolades, I did like them. It boosted my ego. But some people don't like accolades, or they'll nonchalant, like, hey, it's not a big deal, or, I don't want to be in the spotlight. Yeah, you'll be the first one that would, raise their hand to donate some money, right? And so I was telling Albert that there's two things that happened in the last few years. One of them was I was with on one of the desert trips with some of the men I was involved with, and we were finishing up this session of men that were they crossed the threshold, like Albert and I did with fasting, and it was a remarkable experience. We were a part of it, and as we were leaving, one of the men, I go, "So what'd you think, dude? What did you get out of this?" And he's like, "Oh, nothing. I wanted to give the men all the love that I could and support, and I was there for them." And I was like, it doesn't work that way, right? He's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I go, "Do you realize the medicine you could have given the men by showing them how much you appreciated them by just being there, by telling them what you received?" Because I can tell you what I got. Like, I got a whole new, like, feeling of, like, appreciation and gratitude that I've done this, and now I'm with other, 18 other men who have done this, and I just felt like I was back at the desert, and I just felt so much appreciation. He's like, "I never thought about that." I go, "What if the men," because he was one of the leaders, "what if the men would have heard that from you? Don't you think that would have been impactful?" And he's like, "I never thought of it like that." And I go, "Look, you could be over here and giving all your life, but if you're cutting yourself short, you're not receiving, you're cutting all of this off. You're out of balance. You can't be a giver all your life and fail to receive it. The law of reciprocity states whatever you give, you have to be able to receive." And then there was another thing I did. So it blew his mind. I talked to Al about that. Another thing that I learned in this process, and I learned it a year before, is why it was a big deal for me. I was in this coaching program, and we had to ask someone, a stranger, to pay for $25 worth of something to a stranger, because the exercise, it was like, who would donate $25 to a cause? We all raise our hand. Who would ask for $25 for a cause? No one raised their hand. And so the idea was to learn how to receive. Bottom line, I'm in line at the airport. I was scared to death because I feel like, I'm doing this MLM or something. I'm asking people for money like I'm a beggar. All this imposter syndrome was coming through my, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want resistance. So finally I'm in line, asked this lady, "Hey, would you mind buying me this?" She's like, "No." That didn't work. So I'm in line to this coffee. I'm thinking, shit, I got to do this. And I had my coffee. I had a bagel and some other things. I go, "Hey, bro." This guy next to me, "Hey, listen, this is a project I'm doing, and we're supposed to ask a stranger for $25 to pay for our stuff. It sounds really weird. Would you mind buying this for me?" And he's like, "Absolutely." And what I learned from it, he just started laughing at me. He's like, "Tell more about it." What I learned, it was a conversation after that I gained. It wasn't I gained the $25. It was the law of reciprocity. Wasn't just the receiving of the gift. It was a conversation, and then the accolade, and then the attaboy of, "Dude, keep doing what you're doing. I love what you're doing." That really instilled a feeling that I hadn't had receiving something like that. That's why it was so impactful for me. This is where I learned how important it is. If you're willing to give, you have to be willing to receive in the same manner, or else you're going to be off balance. Got excited.
Exactly. just like that. You're gonna be off balance and fall.
Amen to that.
Well, I think that one's definitely the biggest gift for me. You have to be willing to understand, like, what is it really going to take to understand and like balance the scales?
Yeah.
Because if not, you're just going to fall over, like you said. And so I think the hardest thing, just going back on the topic for a guy, is to ask for that help as well too, which is why vulnerability, it's a form of vulnerability, right? And whenever you do that to someone that you really, really love, I think it shows how much you actually dropped your ego, for one, and two, it shows like you care enough, you respect, again, it's another form of respect, that person to trust that they can handle whatever it is that you're asking for. One of the best ways for just any person, but specifically with a man, to really like connect with someone is to make a request. And sometimes that's very, very vulnerable. It's very, very hard to do for a lot of guys because we're taught at a very young age to learn how to do stuff on our own. You know, like you even said it in one of the first things was we want to let the kids play and run around and fall and do that. So you're taught to do that, right? So you want to build your own life and build your own career. So that creates the backbone of, I don't want to ask for help unless I absolutely in a dire situation to do so.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is really hard for, I think, a lot of people themselves that are just starting their journey. They don't know how to combat that resistance. And then for everyone watching, it's like, okay, well, I know you're able to do it, but how come you're not able to ask for something? Because it seems very simple, but it's all up in here, you know?
Yeah.
So I know we have about like 5-10 minutes left. So I want to just ask you this, in terms of love, in terms of respect, and we talk about appreciation, what do you think is the easiest way for someone to, they've never done it before in a romantic relationship, how would someone just go about sharing that love?
Yeah, this is a really great question because you have to be comfortable enough to talk to that person. So let's say, for example, you're just dating for a couple of days. It's not going to be enough time. Like, there's got to be trust. There's got to be, like, are both of you showing up on time? Are you both being present? So let's say you're in a month or two now, and you've gone out a few times. And what I've learned is you just have to ask. Like, one of the questions that I had to ask early on is, so how do you deal with conflicts?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really, really, really in your face conversation. And you'll find out how people deal with conflicts. And then tell them how you deal with conflicts and what triggers you. I've had some deep conversations with that. And the first time I did this, dude, was last year. Was the first time I've ever asked anybody after 40 years of fucking dating, right? Or being, a young man. I was asking someone, so how do you deal with conflict? Now, what I didn't do, I didn't go down the rabbit hole enough to find out more about conflict. I got surface, but still asking that question is very vulnerable. See, for me, because I was hurt as a kid, I've told people, women specifically, is in conflict, you can't put your hands on me. Well, why is that? Well, because if you're mad at me and you put your hand on my wrist, yes, I'm an adult, but there's still a part of me that's my nervous system is still working through that. When you put your hand on me in conflict, that means I was going to get hurt. That means you're going to hurt me, right? But my nervous system thinks it is, and so I react differently. So I had to really learn how to communicate what my needs are. And so to answer your question, basically, how do you express what love is you have to ask that definition. So how do you need to be loved? Like, how do you like communicating? Like, do you even like texting? Remember, I'm having a conversation with someone. I was like, so do you prefer text, phone call, or FaceTime? This person was the only person that ever said this. I'd prefer FaceTime. I would have never known had I not asked. But that's a form of love. You're showing appreciation. You're showing respect because you want to know. Because you can't use the words, well, how do you want to feel appreciated? How do you feel respectful? That's trite. Our definitions are different. But if you ask someone, how they like to be communicated. Like, what's the best form? Like, do you like texting? Some people don't like texting all the time. I didn't realize that a lot of women don't like texting. I'd rather have you call them. I didn't know this until I was 50 years old. So again, that form of love that we're showing is also a form of respect that we have to have for ourselves. So I think start there, which is ask that person what they like, what they don't like, in a form of communication of how they want to get communicated, how do they deal with conflict. Those are like basic things, because if you can get around those, then you can dive deeper into other conversations that may be triggering, and those triggers are just wounds that haven't been healed.
Yeah, I feel like just making it about them too. Just saying like, what do you need when you feel overwhelmed or something like that? Something to feel comforting, because we all want to feel that comfort when we feel that like inner child coming out.
Yeah.
Because it's cool, because we know when we get triggered, we kind of just, a lot of people will tense up. They just don't know what to feel. And if you're in a new relationship, there's a lot at stake, right? At least it feels like there's a lot at stake, unless you've dated a lot.
Well,
So
think about it. Here's what I've learned, right? Now, I'm 26 years older than you. So the women I've dated have been with multiple men, multiple relationships. What you don't realize is all those relationships are still there. So you don't know what the last hand on the stove was for them. You don't know until conflict or trigger happens. And because I'm older, it's been very confusing for me, because there'll be something I'm saying and having no idea it triggered that person because they're not telling me, and didn't know it was 2 or 3 or 4 guys that before me, but they haven't dealt with it. So if you haven't dealt with it, it's going to come forward in some form, because your nervous system is saying, okay, this reminds me of something. That one guy did this, therefore this guy's probably going to do that, which is a false pretense, but it's your survival brain protecting you. It's called your ego. A plus B equals C. So this must equal C, as opposed to asking questions. Hey, you did this. Can you tell me why you did that? That's how adults talk.
and we don't realize like how simple we can make it too. We're all
Yeah.
just trying to figure it out too when we're adults.
So for you, man, so I'm curious with you. I know we have a few minutes left, but what has been your biggest, I guess, aha moment as a man now, learning about love?
I think for me is like, I think trust and love kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is I think it starts at the inner core. It starts with what do I show up with myself? How do I give what I need? I've also learned too that I think a lot of times I say I want space, or I want some time in between. That's usually me avoiding the conflict.
Yeah.
Which again, I think those two are hand in hand. Is becoming aware enough to understand what I need, and then also how I need it, so I can ask for it. Because I don't want to. Again, I'm used to just being very independent, but learning how to work together and share what that means, and that takes a lot, because I am used to doing everything by myself. And so one of the greatest gifts that I've gotten from my men's group is just practicing like how to ask what I need, and then just being okay with saying no when I don't want to do something. I think that's hard for me to do. I have to exercise that muscle almost daily, so I can be comfortable with my no's, because it makes me more trustworthy. Because that was a problem that I had in the past, was I would want to basically make. I know there's so many solutions out there that I'm like, okay, there is a possibility for it to happen, but sometimes it can be really expensive to get that solution. So I think being able to say no more, or hey, that's not in the cards at this point in time, has also allowed for me to, again, circling back to know what is important for me and trusting myself to showcase the love that I need for everyone.
Yeah. No, good point, dude. Yeah, man. So what have you got out of this Men Love Differently episode we have here? What'd you learn about yourself?
For me, it was just being able to accept again. I didn't know where we were going to go with this, honestly. I had like 2 or 3 ideas where I thought it would go. I think just remembering. Again, I don't think we always learn a lot. We just need reminders of everything. It's reminding myself that I'm a little kid, and that once I just be playful, once I share what I want, I can get what I want. Or if we can't, we can work together as a team. Because that's what I want at the end of the day. Is I want, when I showcase someone love, I want to do it as a team together and not feeling like we're two individuals butting heads.
Yeah.
We didn't touch on too much about that, but I think that's the underlying win of this all is we want to work together and be collaborative. I want to be collaborative with you. I want to be collaborative with my sisters, my family, my significant other, and just be there, you know?
Yeah.
What do you get out of this?
So it's a confirmation. It's interesting, bro. It's like I have a lot of peace in my heart right now, and a lot of it has to do with being able to talk, being able to express myself, being able to tell you how I feel, what's going on, but my body's looking for chaos. I'm looking for that chaos because I haven't had it in about 11 months, dude. I haven't had, Matt, it's going on, yeah, almost 11 months now of uncertainty of this and that. I haven't had that. So I'm feeling a little off, meaning it's different, but it should be this way. I should be able to talk to my son, my daughter, people in my life, should be able to have conversations. Mm-hmm. But for 50 some years, I'm 52, started talking at 2 and, messing around at 3 or 4, 5, 6 and walking and stuff. I've never been able to communicate like this for a long, long time. So it's very uncomfortable. So people think it's natural. No, it's fucking hard for me to do. But I've chosen to do the hard thing and not worry about the outcome, because if it's something that is bothering you, the difference that I have now, I'm willing to listen to something that I said that may have irked somebody. Mm-hmm. I'm not just, you got to deal with it. No, if there's something, talk about it, right? Because I'm willing to get the feedback, but I'm also not willing to let you off the hook. And I think that's a shift for me. And this episode really helped me reaffirm that position that love really ain't lies, dude. Like, that's been such a really, really profound thing for me, is I love hard. So if I'm telling you the truth, guess what? I love you pretty fucking hard. And people take that as egotistical, as arrogant, as know-it-all, as an asshole. That's them, because no one is being honest with anybody out there in this world. So I've learned that the more honest I am with you, I have to be just as honest with myself. That's what the accountability is. So this episode really affirmed that men love differently. I love differently. But I love in a way that's congruent to the man that I want to become. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think accountability was interesting with me this year. I think you have to have personal accountability, but how does that apply to the peers? I think that's part of the love cycle as well. Is we're all adults, right? When you're in adult world, right? And I don't want to parent my relationships, right? I don't want to feel like I'm like oppressing over, like dictating it. So that was an interesting little thing of like, if I'm going to hold someone accountable, I don't want to feel like I'm parenting. That doesn't feel like accountability. That feels like parenting to me. So, but if we're going to come to a conversation about it, I'm going to let you know, hey, this is what was told.
Yeah.
And I feel like counting is making sure we count what we said in the past, right? And if there needs to be a change of terms, then either A, I'm going to walk away, or I will, if I love you enough, I want to, negotiate or reintroduce, right? So I think it goes back to the love and respect portion of this piece. Is like, if I'm going to showcase that love, I want it to be mutually given, right? And if not, then we have to, see what's best for us both, and we can do what we need to do. So I think that's another side piece of this as well. Is like, accountability doesn't mean you have to parent someone, but it shows how much you love someone when you want to hold them to a certain degree, and hold yourself as well, because you have to do that if you want it to be successful. So, do you want to finish it off?
Yeah, this is another episode of the Legacy Project, and we're just really thrilled that you got to join us again tonight. And thank you for everybody that joined us and supported us, and all the comments. And we always invite you. You're always welcome to come on. So if you want to join our show, you can private message Albert or myself during the show. We'll bring you on. But the whole purpose of this project is just to bring more awareness, to bring truth, to bring conversation. You know, just to bring authenticity to a unauthentic world at times. And you know, we're going on episode 40 coming up, and the end of the year is 2 months away, and there's so much growth that we have experienced. So we're just thankful you get to experience it with us. So on behalf of Albert and I, thank you again. We'll see you next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. PST. We have a phenomenal guest coming to hell and back. We'll just put it that way. So we are going to have some great conversations, so you don't want to miss it. And I'll put a little pretense in. This is Albert's school teacher from high school that we're bringing on, who saw one of our episodes, and we had a little interview with her, and it's going to be fantastic. So can't wait to have you experience her next week, but we'll see you next Tuesday.